Welcome to Los Angeles, a true variety show of a podcast covering any topic that I can find a resource on, but one done in true LA style, meaning I make it entirely about myself. I am your host, Alex, just another comedian who moved to LA. And today on the podcast, I have with me a repeat guest, Mr. Chris. How's it going, Chris? How you doing today?
I'm good, buddy. It's good to be back. Huge fan of the show. Huge fan
Oh,
of
I love
Haas.
it. Have you listened to any episodes besides the one you were on?
I did. I listened to a couple.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone doesn't remember, Chris joined me a few months ago, and we talked Spider-Man, all things Spider-Man across so many different intellectual properties. But it was because of how fantastic Chris was that I decided to bring him back to talk about the latest release in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that being Thor: Love and Thunder. So, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself quickly, talk about your accolades when it comes to the MCU, and let's get into Thor: Love and Thunder, right?
Yes, sir. Well, dude, me and Haas we're Marvel veterans. We've been going to these movies for years and years and years. Our friendship is kind of based around them. I'm not even sure if we'd be friends, if these movies didn't exist. But no, dude, I'm a huge fan, and I love talking to Haas about it because he's also a huge fan. And, he used to live here in Virginia with me. We could talk about it in person, but the podcast is good. But, dude, I got some thoughts on this movie. And,
I
phase
heard
4
you took notes when you went to see it, which is a level of commitment I wasn't ready for. I really appreciate that you did that.
Yeah, much to the dismay of my wife, I was taking notes on my phone throughout the movie because I knew we were going to talk about it, and
oh my God, that's great!
I love Thor, dude, and Ragnarok, the one before this, is I think my second favorite Marvel movie of all time.
Yeah, we definitely saw that together when that came out. Was that November 2017? I think.
Yeah, that's right. And I watched it right before I went to see this, and dude, it's still fantastic. It's really great.
Yeah, let's talk a little background on just Thor in general before we get to it. So I'll just start. My dad was a huge Thor fan. It was his favorite comic book, and my dad's kind of my inspiration for how I got into comics. Watched all the TV shows with him as a kid, and I never really understood why he was so into Thor. And I think maybe that's because there may have been an animated series when we were kids, but it definitely wasn't as prominent as X-Men or Spider-Man or Batman. So I didn't have a ton of exposure to Thor growing up. I knew he really liked Thor, read all the comics. I think he really liked the mythology components of it, right? Thor was actually Odin's son. He fought other Nordic gods or what have you. So there was a lot of intrigue with actual history and myths, and I think that's what my dad dug about it. But I knew enough about Thor when they announced they were making a movie for the Avengers, but other than that, didn't have much of an upbringing. And then I actually never saw the second Thor. It's the only MCU movie I've never seen.
Really? It's like it was the worst ranked Marvel movie for a while, but I think Eternals took the top spot now. But
oh, really?
Which you still haven't seen, right? We talked about that.
No, I did watch Eternals.
Oh, okay.
Which I wasn't a huge fan of, but whatever.
You didn't. No,
Dark World. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I was just saying that you kind of there was a lot of stuff in Love and Thunder that was a callback to the Dark World that I also forgot about because I only watched the Dark World once and I was like, this movie sucks. I never want to watch it again.
All right, what about you? What is your background with Thor?
Dude, I love him. Didn't know much about the comics. I knew about the hammer, but I have, since he came in, that first Thor is a great movie. And I thought Hemsworth has done, a really good job. And this was kind of like his breakout role, wasn't it?
I think so. I just saw recently something that they originally wanted to cast Liam Hemsworth as Thor because Chris Hemsworth auditioned, but he bombed his audition. I don't remember who, but someone who was pretty high up at Marvel at the time begged them to reconsider. Maybe it was the director or something, and he got another chance, got the role. And I'm with you, man. Hemsworth has killed it as Thor since the beginning. He stands out in all the team up movies. He's definitely balanced the quirky, funny stuff that some directors have asked him to do with the really serious stuff that God, who was the first Thor director? Double check this.
You're right, dude. I mean, and in Love and Thunder, you see like his comedic chops have come a long way. I feel like,
Yeah,
I
for
feel like
sure.
he's really funny now since the first Thor.
Oh, Kenneth Branagh. That was the guy
Uh,
who did the original Thor. And he's like a Shakespearean type of director, so everyone felt that there was that nice royal, over the top, dramatic touch in the first Thor movie. Um, that they have since decided to replace with Taika Waititi as the new director. But yeah, man, I still remember, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. When they first had that first Thor movie, right? There was a lot. That was the first time in the MCU they were going to take a character that was like completely out of this world.
like
You think,
ridiculous, yeah.
yeah, well, just for the suspension of disbelief. The first Iron Man movie is really grounded in
Hmm.
a believable-ish reality. Then you have the Hulk movie, which is a little bit of a stretch, but okay, it's still science-y. And then Captain America, I think, came out right before Thor. I could be wrong. No, actually, I think it was Thor and then Captain America. But Thor was the first one where you're like, all right, how the hell are they going to make this fit into that universe they came up with for Iron Man? But they did a pretty good job, and it didn't feel weird when they got to the Avengers movie and Thor showed up.
It is true, dude. Like the first time, I was like, how are they going to do Asgard and not have it be ridiculous? But they did a
Yeah,
really good job. And dude, I just got to mention, I got to name drop Anthony Hopkins because he's like the best as Odin. At least he was like up until Ragnarok when he
yeah,
dies.
absolutely. He's great, and then Tom Hiddleston as Loki was
Dude, he's
always
awesome.
amazing.
Wait, did
And
you watch the show?
I watched Loki, yeah. So I mean, if you want to talk Marvel overall, I have been skipping a lot of the shows, but I watched WandaVision and I watched Loki all the way through.
Hmm.
I tried watching a few others and I just gave up because I was really bored. But um, overall, I think the Thor franchise has been far more successful than it might have been with different actors, different direction, or less capable hands. But it did lead us to this movie. So yeah, off the bat, any last thoughts on the history of Thor before we get in here? I mean, like, I think Thor had a huge story arc in the Infinity War and Endgame films. So this was, basically the third movie in a new trilogy about Thor, all things kind of considered. Since I like to say that he had his other arc kind of completed in his first three movies. But what
I
did you
was just
think overall?
I was just gonna say that like he has gone through more shit than any of the
Yeah,
other. Like he's lost everybody,
yeah.
and sometimes I forget that because he's like so goofy and upbeat. But I don't know. It's just his arc has been crazy. And dude, oh, I gotta say, like right off the bat, I was hyped to see him with the Guardians,
Oh, you
like how
thought
that
that
was
was
gonna.
going to be what this movie was?
I thought like honestly, I knew they couldn't keep them in there for that long because Guardians 3 that's gonna be coming soon. But I was like, I hope they get to like, we see how they've been like living with each other over the past, few years.
Yeah, wasn't
Pretty
that
awesome.
weird that they made the creative choice to end Endgame with Thor deciding to join the Guardians when they clearly had no plans for that whatsoever?
I know. Okay, I want to talk to you about. You've been saying this for a while now, but we could save it for the end. How like I don't know what the hell's going on, man. What is the Phase 4 is a mess.
Yeah,
There's so many loose ends and new characters and like new worlds that have not connected yet.
yeah, well, yeah, I 100% agree. I was just thinking the other day about the number of post-credit scenes that Marvel has set up that either don't make any sense or went nowhere. Because I was thinking about like the Scorpion in Spider-Man: Homecoming went
Yep.
nowhere. I'm I'm very certain that this ending scene, this post-credit scene, is going to go nowhere. There was the Howard the Duck teaser at the end of Guardians 1 that went nowhere. There's just a lot of setup with no payoff, as
It's
it
true.
feels like in the new Marvel. But yeah, so anything else to say before we jump into Thor: Love and Thunder?
No, let's get into it.
All right, Thor: Love and Thunder, released in July of 2022, featuring Thor, starring such prominent actors as Chris Hemsworth, Christian Bale, Natalie Portman, Tessa Thompson. There's a few others. I'm just going to say this is your spoiler warning. If anyone's listening that it cares about spoilers, I don't know why you would, but in case you do, um, why don't you kind of describe the synopsis of the film for us, Chris?
Well, it takes place after Avengers Endgame, and Thor's been roaming around with the Guardians. They've been getting into space adventures together, and and then he decides to leave the Guardians and discovers that there's a crazy god killer on the loose who's killed
Mm-hmm.
his god friend. And this crazy god killer is Christian Bale, who I wanted to start with and say I thought he did awesome, dude. I thought he did really good. Did you like him?
As Gore the God Butcher, yeah, I think you know Christian Bale's a great actor. He's kind of gonna be amazing in anything he's in. He definitely doesn't really fit the tone of this movie very well.
Not at
It's
all.
like this '80s action, goofy comedy, right? And then you have these really dark scenes where he's either lamenting over the lost daughter or talking about how the will of the gods is incompatible with the people who worship them or what have you. So that was definitely odd, but overall, I really liked Christian Bale. I don't think I've ever had much of a complaint about any of his performances in his career.
Dude, you're so right. He was definitely a tonal shift. Like his origin story, which I'm pretty sure is how the movie starts,
Mm-hmm.
is we see him in the desert, with his daughter, and he's like praying to the gods. He's like, save us.
Yeah,
And then his daughter dies, and then I can't remember how, somehow ends up in like a god's like room, like a room with the gods.
yeah.
And the
It's
god's
just
basically like, fuck you, I don't give a shit about you. And he's like,
you know,
oh, but don't touch that like magic sword that kills gods that I left like 3 feet
yeah.
away from you, because that would be bad.
That was definitely where I started to see, ooh, all right, we're already getting off the rails
Yeah,
here in the first
that
few
was when
minutes.
I was like, okay, we're just moving 90 miles an hour here. I got it.
And
But
go ahead.
his motives were sound, is what I was gonna say. Like I'm like, all right, I get why he's pissed off. He has a weapon to do so. What I didn't get is why he anytime he picked up the sword, he was caked in white makeup and like all that weird shit. I guess the sword just does that to you. The
Yeah,
necromancer, that's what the sword is called. The
right. I mean, I'm
necromancer.
looking at pictures of what he looks like in the comics, and it's a little closer to what he ended up looking like. Like he is just white and black. But that opening scene, he just looks like a regular dude, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure wearing all that makeup isn't fun. So he just wanted to quickly get a couple scenes in, just basically dressed normally. But yeah, I thought he was great. We can get into this if you want. I think Marvel's been leaning way too heavy into the family motivations for being evil in movies. I think they got a bunch of praise when Captain America: Civil War came out, and Zemo's motivation was revenge for his family, and they got a bunch of motivation, or they got a bunch of praise also when the Vulture's motivation in Spider-Man's Homecoming was to support his family. And
Mhm.
now it feels like they won't do any other type of motivation for a villain. And I'm like, come on, like I can handle, like, think about Die Hard. Would Die Hard have been better if halfway through the movie you found out Hans Gruber had like a sick daughter that he was trying to take care of? No, it wouldn't have. It would have been like, what the fuck is going on? He was a cool ass villain, and his motivation was just, I'm a bad guy. I like stealing. I'm smarter than you. I'm gonna do it. I don't care, and I don't need a huge backstory about how sad somebody's life is all the time. This movie, I will say, handles it well, but coming off Multiverse of Madness,
Yes.
where
Oh God.
Wanda's motivation is her family that doesn't exist, I just think Marvel, come on, you can. There's other things people are motivated by. I'm fine with greed. I'm fine with lust. I'm fine with apathy. I don't always need a rich desire to return to some family member or lost love all the time. You can do other things.
Dude, you're so right. It's true. And they need to change that up. But also, I wanted to go back to Christian Bale, say he didn't get enough screen time in the
Definitely
movie.
not.
Um, and I had no idea that his daughter was Chris Hemsworth's daughter until like yesterday. Did you
Yeah, I
know that?
saw that. Yeah, which is odd because one would assume that their long-term plan would be to um, maybe give the role of a Thor in one of the movies or a powerful godlike character. I would imagine that Chris Hemsworth is expensive, but if you bring on a younger superhero for future Marvel films, you'd want someone really cheap, and maybe that could be the person. But it's like now, now you have his daughter, and you're kind of back to relying on the Hemsworth family
It's
for your
true.
acting. So I'm surprised if the plan is to use his daughter later as Love or whatever her
Which
superhero.
again, we have no idea, and
True.
which again probably won't pan out.
Yeah.
Like who
Yeah.
knows?
Good point. So
I feel
yeah,
like
overall, we'll just do a quick more plot synopsis. Gore is introduced as the villain. Thor has decided to leave the Guardians because they tell him he's sad and he needs love in his life or
yeah,
something. And he goes back to what is it?
New
Where is
Asgard.
New Asgard? Where is that though? Is it Norway?
I think it's like Norway. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he goes back to Norway, finds out that his old love, Jane Foster, is dying of cancer, but is also now Lady
No, no,
Thor.
no, no. He doesn't find out about the cancer till like the third act of the movie.
Okay.
We find out about the cancer, I think,
Yeah,
because
that sounds
Natalie
right.
Portman's talking with the doctor from the first Thor, and so yeah, dude, that whole thing was a little weird. Like you said, the movie's funny and goofy, and then it cuts to Natalie Portman. It's like you are going to die, and I'm like, that's not funny. Like I'm not laughing anymore. And
Yeah.
then like the hammer calls to her and she goes to it and it reassembles itself, and that happens in the span of like 10 minutes, I think.
Right.
And then it cuts to the next scene and I was like, okay, like I guess she's
Yeah.
Lady Thor now.
Yep. And then what happens? They're all in Norway and Gore attacks, right?
Yeah, Gore attacks, and I feel like he has like an army of some kind. Did I imagine that?
He did. He had like a shadow creatures.
Those creepy shadow creatures, and then that's when Thor sees Jane for the first time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this this first act, I guess, right? How was what was just your impression of it overall? We've already talked about Gore's intro. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like Natalie Portman having cancer up front was a bit of a I don't know, an airbag to my car crash there, right there for a second. Or I guess lack thereof an airbag because it just kind of came out of you from nowhere. But what do you think of kind of the opening act of the film?
I was confused. I was I was expecting like the rock and roll start of Ragnarok with like laughs and excitement, but it was like the super depressing Gore opening, and then we see Thor and the Guardians, and I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. Like here's that Ragnarok vibe, and then back to cancer, and then I'm like, okay, and it was like every other scene was sad, and then there was like 30 minutes of laughs and stuff. But dude, I wanted to say that I feel like they kind of forced Natalie Portman into this movie. Like I don't know, the whole like the hammer calls to her, she's worthy. Don't you think we would have seen that earlier in the canon? Like they were just like, all right, how are we going to fit Jane Foster in this movie?
It was weird, right? Because from everything I know, Natalie Portman has really tried to distance herself from the Thor franchise. She wanted out after the second one, and they tried to get her back for the third one, and they tried to get her back for Infinity War or Endgame, and she wasn't interested. I know they used stock footage of her in the Endgame for one of their scenes. So it did seem really weird when 3 years ago at Comic-Con, they brought her out and announced she was going to be Lady Thor, because I just figured, I mean, Natalie Portman is a very, in my mind, she's a pretty serious actor who's had a lot of really prolific roles. And I would say Jane Foster's pretty low on the list of ones I remember her for. So it was definitely surprising that she came back for it. A lot of people were assuming the whole point of the movie was going to be Thor passes the torch to Lady Thor, which didn't really end up happening since, spoiler, she dies at the end. But so yeah, I mean, was it just like a payday for Natalie Portman? That seems to be what I think is going on. I don't know if there were a lot of fans clamoring for Jane Foster's character to come back. Do you?
No, I mean, I not really. What I think it was that she was maybe tired of being the damsel in distress like in the old Thor movies, and they were like, all right, what if you're like a badass and have the hammer and are jacked? And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll come back for $10 million, you know. Dude, yeah, so she looked really jacked. Was that real? Do you know if that was real? There's a lot of debate.
I don't know. I doubt it. I don't know. There's definitely people that are asserting it's CGI. I guess it's possible. that she got really jacked for this role, but I haven't seen any YouTube videos telling me how to get ripped like Natalie Portman in 30 days or less. So it's hard to tell.
Dude, I did see that, she's 5'3"
Mm-hmm.
and she's like at shoulder height with Hemsworth the whole movie. I read that they set up like walking platforms on all the sets that like raised her up 3 feet. So
Oh my god.
Taika was like, it was like navigating a maze because we had to like walk around these platforms that Natalie was walking on.
Hey, do you allegedly, do you know what the biggest height discrepancy in a movie in Hollywood history was? And I mean, this could be just something I read once, it might not be true, but I know this is one that was pretty notable for a while. It's a
Wait,
comedy. Do you know
yeah,
what
so
like which two actors, like male and female leads, had like the biggest height discrepancy?
no, tell me.
Do you remember that movie Four Christmases with Vince Vaughn and Reese
Oh
Witherspoon?
my God, yeah.
Yeah. Vince Vaughn is 6'5", maybe 6'6", and Reese Witherspoon, I think, is 5'1".
Witherspoon.
Is
Dude,
that not
even the movie poster is like them back to
Yeah.
back and she's standing on like, yeah. Oh my
No,
God.
apparently that filming that movie was incredibly difficult for getting shots with them both in frame.
Dude, but all right, moving forward with the movie. So New Asgard gets attacked, right? He sees Jane Foster. He's very scared. At one point, that like helmet pops up on his head when he what is that? Do you know what that is? Was that from the comics?
Sometimes I don't know. There's been this. It's probably easier to have your stunt double in when they're wearing a full mask, but it is crazy how much CGI was in this movie. And it seems like ever since Iron Man came up with nanotech, every superhero has a mask that just comes on and off whenever they
It's
think
true.
about it.
It's so true. But basically, they're like, all right, they somehow like get Christian Bale to leave, and they're like, all right, we need the gods' help.
Yeah, and he leaves because he kidnaps all the kids, right?
That's right. He kidnaps all the
Kind of
kids.
dark. I was not really
Extremely
expecting.
dark. But I'm also laughing,
Yeah.
kind of.
And
And
dude,
then,
at this point, we've already had 2 fight scenes, right? And we
yeah.
kind of skipped over it, but that opening fight scene with the Guardians, I actually kind of enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
They weren't playing Sweet Child of Mine, right? They were playing Welcome to the Jungle.
I think so.
Right? Yeah, some Guns N'
Very
Roses.
heavy Guns N' Roses soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it opened with Welcome to the Jungle, and it was very. It also opened with narration from Korg, which, oh my God, Taika Waititi really likes to make prominent roles for himself in his own movies, is what I'm noticing. But that was, God, we skipped over a lot. There was also that whole thing where they're like, he went from dad bod to God bod by not skipping a leg day.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of tells us what's been happening since Endgame.
But did either of these fight scenes stand out to you?
Yeah, they were great. I thought they were great. And the fight scene in New Asgard was when, he calls Mjolnir to him and it flies back to Jane Foster. And I'm like, oh shit. But I wanted to get into, after the kids are kidnapped, they decide they're going to go to the gods. There's a scene where he's like talking to Mjolnir as if it's like an ex-girlfriend. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was cute. And he's talking to his axe, but his axe being weird. I don't know why. I feel like I just have to say this. I did not like this movie. I want to get this out of the way now. I feel like I'm doing a lot of compliments. I went in with really low expectations, and these first couple of scenes were really, really emblematic of the biggest problem I thought with this movie is it was just so chatty.
Yes, dude,
Nothing had any room to breathe. There had to be 100 jokes everywhere. Like at this point, there's so many weird running jokes going on the whole movie. You had the screaming goats. You had the weird thing where Chris Hemsworth he keeps looking in Peter Quill's eyes for some reason because they love each other, which was weird.
Yeah.
You had him changing costumes like 20 times. You had you had Natalie Portman trying to come up with a catchphrase. You had just the jokes about their relationship because they hadn't seen each other in a while. So when they meet in the battle, it's really awkward. He's like, "Oh, I've been great. Have you been great?" Like it was just a lot. And then when the action scenes are all just kind of CGI, it starts to get really, really hard to just kind of watch.
Right.
It just gets really exhausting really quick. I didn't mean to take you way away from describing the plot, but overall, what were your actual thoughts of the movie so that we can kind of use that to shape where we went?
I just want to say I wrote in my notes, like one of the first few notes was relying too heavily on jokes. That was what I wrote.
Oh yeah,
Because you're right, dude. They won't stop. They won't shut the fuck up and get on with the movie. But
yeah,
overall, I said this to you before we started recording. I when I saw it in theaters, I was with my brother, my wife. We were all like, yeah, like we stood up. We were like, yeah, that was good. That was good. And then the next day, I was thinking about it. I was like, wait, was that good? I'm not sure that was good. It was kind of ridiculous.
yeah. And it wasn't the fun ridiculous that Ragnarok has, and I think
Mm-hmm.
part of that is in Ragnarok you had Loki and you had Hulk. You had two characters we've known really well. We've met over several movies. We have a great idea of how they're going to act in certain situations, and then good callbacks. It's funny. We had never really seen Hulk and Thor spend extended time together, and then you had the introduction of some levity, some jokes. You also had Jeff Goldblum, who's like a comedy legend in Ragnarok. And this movie don't really have a lot of comedic actors, and then you have just extended scenes of really weird jokes that I don't think are that funny. And you kind of have the problem where nothing really feels like a big deal because there's so many jokes being thrown around. Like you said, you were laughing when all the kids get kidnapped out of Norway.
It's true. And the like he's never talked to his hammer before, right?
Yeah.
That was never been a
I
thing.
mean, maybe in the comics, I don't know. But yeah, I don't remember that in any of the movies.
Which, I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but it pokes a hole in the entire plot, which is the reason that Natalie Portman is worthy is because he whispered to his hammer and was like, protect her, you
Yeah.
know?
So for those who haven't seen the movie, we come to find out that the reason Jane Foster, Natalie Portman, gets Thor powers is that while Thor and Natalie Portman were dating years and years and years ago, he whispered to the hammer to always take care of her, and somehow that manifested in when she gets cancer, the hammer will fly back together because it was destroyed at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, and then give her the powers of Thor, which was odd, but apparently that's how it happened in the comics with Thor, Lady Thor. Maybe not exactly like that, but she does get cancer, and then she is able to lift Mjolnir as a result.
My question is, if Thor went back to like the memorial where they had the shattered hammer, it wouldn't reassemble for him because isn't he already worthy?
I don't know,
Like,
man.
what's the
Apparently
fucking deal
not.
there?
Yeah, no, I
Taika, what
mean
the hell?
that's definitely one of the big things people are pointing out is that having the hammer would have been pretty useful throughout Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame, and just to find out that it can just come together through whatever bullshit magic it needs is kind of tough. And that's kind of the biggest problem with Phase 4 is it's like we've introduced such crazy events and rules to the canon of the MCU that we can't not think about it whenever anything comes up. What's one of the big questions with the Eternals? If they've been around forever, why didn't they help out during Infinity War? What's the big problem with this movie, which we're going to get to, is the main plot device in this movie could have solved all the problems in Infinity War and Endgame. And, similar things kind of happened during the Multiverse of Madness and, I'm sure across the other boards as well. Like, why didn't Doctor Strange just make Thanos forget what he was doing with his mind forgetting spell in the beginning of Infinity War, and then we would have been good, right?
Very good question. And also, I'm sorry to skip ahead, dude, but while we're on the topic of the hammer, the later on in the movie, the kids are fighting Gore with Thor, and do you remember he's like, temporarily I give you my powers, and he like waves his hammer and they all get his powers. Like, where the fuck
Yeah.
was that for the past 10 years?
Yeah, that was another thing that, oh my God, breaks everything as well, that he can just give his powers away at will.
That would have been so useful
For sure.
in every movie.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'll just quickly go through the synopsis, I guess. We already did the beginning. We already got to the point where the kids are kidnapped and Thor telekinetically communicates with one through some really, really bad CGI, right? Finds out that Gore is hiding in the Shadow Realm. So what does Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie decide to do?
They decide to go to the gods. What was the place called?
I believe it's called
Millennium City?
Omnipotent City, which is quite a
Omnipotent
name.
City.
Omnipotent City. What
And they
did you think of this?
that scene is like 30 minutes long, dude. And it's just all goofiness and like I kind of liked Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is Zeus, spoiler alert. And they go to like dinner at this big like dining hall and Zeus is parading around being ridiculous and they show all the different gods. And that was when
Yeah,
he was like, "Oh, you remember?" He's like, "Oh, look, it's like Bon Bon, the god of bonds," and it's like that little animated thing. I was like, ugh.
yeah, it was like a dumpling god, remember?
"Yeah, didn't all the kids just get kidnapped like no more than 10 minutes ago?"
Right. Yeah, no, this was bad. This was not good. Their plan is to go and to the city of gods that we've never heard about before,
Never.
to recruit all the gods to help them go fight Gore, even though they almost beat him the first time. So I'm not really even sure why they're so worried.
They did fine in the first
Yeah.
fight. Yeah.
Yeah. And wouldn't you just want to go after like the Avengers? Like, wouldn't it be way easier to just like call them all up on your cell phone and and find
Like
whatever
call
Avengers?
Captain Marvel, she'll solve this shit in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, or Doctor Strange, or Spider-Man, or Falcon. Like you could go fight Gore pretty easily with just the guys right there on Earth. But
It's true.
that's been a problem since being. So yeah, I hated this. This was so weird. It breaks so many things. They did a really good job of making it like, okay, the Nordic gods that our mythologies are based on are just a long-standing tradition that had to do with, actual alternate universe timelines, right? Like where Thor and his family did exist, and our people just happen to, have this Norse mythological deities based off of, right? So then to suggest that, okay, you also have, Zeus and all of the Greek gods also exist, and also random gods for other things also exist, and we've never come across them once in our entire existence, is kind of a lot. And then the fact that it's played off like a joke is kind of a lot, and the fact that nothing really comes from this situation. They didn't go there trying to get Zeus's thunderbolt. That's just what they ended up getting, right? They wanted like an
It's
army of
true.
people firing. They just get there, and Chris Hemsworth starts dumping exposition about how we need his lightning bolt. It's the most powerful weapon in the world. If we could have that, we could do anything.
It's true, dude. And it was like what you just said is exactly right. Nothing comes of it. And the scene lasts like 30 to 40 minutes and they're just sitting in this room. Russell Crowe is spewing off nonsense in like the worst Greek accent I've ever heard in my life. And he's in like and then he like ties Thor up, blows his clothes off, all the girls faint. I was like, yeah, that would have been funny if it was 1985. Like
I want to talk about that. That scene had the same energy as, do you remember those terrible Fantastic Four movies with Jessica Alba in like 2005
Do I ever?
2007?
Do
Okay.
I
Do you remember how in both of those Fantastic Four movies, they had the weirdest, most contrived situations to get Jessica Alba naked for like no reason? And it does not age well, right? And they do the exact same thing with Chris Hemsworth, and it's so stupid. In the first, although there is something funny about the Chris Hemsworth thing with his tattoos.
That was funny. That was funny.
It's kind of funny. But do you remember that first Fantastic Four movie? They get the three of the Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic, Human Torch, and Jessica Alba, the Invisible Woman, get to the bridge, can't figure out what's going on. There's a big police barricade at the bridge, and they're like, Sue, turn invisible and walk through the crowd to get around the police. And she's like, okay. She turns invisible, and they say, oh, but Sue, take your clothes off. Because otherwise you'll be visible. She says, okay. So she starts taking her clothes off and then slowly loses the ability to stay invisible, and everyone sees her in her underwear. And then she gets all mad, but then she goes back to being invisible, takes all her clothes off, and then just walks naked through the barricade. Like, you still have to shove your way through. And then Mr. Fantastic and Human Torch just follow her, like just follow an invisible person through this police barricade. So they clearly get by the police barricade. So it didn't do anything or help the situation at all. It made no sense. And that was the same shit here with Russell Crowe just flicking his fingers for no reason, just to see him naked.
It's true, dude. It's a little ridiculous, but he he is fucking swole, dude. Hemsworth is swole. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But I gotta ask, like, what was with the like Russell Crowe walks out from behind that thing in a tutu? What the hell was that?
I don't know, man. That whole scene was just not great, and I kept wondering how it would factor into the plot. And the thing I keep reading online that I agree with is everyone's saying, "Wow, a city full of gods seems like a great opportunity for Gore the God Butcher to attack and kill everybody and cause a much bigger problem." But that is not at all what happened, right?
Oh, dude.
Thor kills more gods in this movie than the God Butcher.
You're right. You're right. But like, so that scene was ridiculous. Like, I got a few laughs out of Russell Crowe. I just like, I'm not sure it was necessary, and the fact that it was a time filler, like when the movie's already so short, it also leads me to believe, all right, maybe this just isn't that good of a movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the intended reaction was us to laugh, and it's just really not that great, which is tough. And then they kill Zeus, and there's no consequences or repercussions from it, right?
That's right. They fucking throw. Oh my god. It's crazy. And then
Yeah.
wait, so what happens after that? Are you still reading the synopsis? They go to the shadow realm, or do they go somewhere else?
Um, as their journey continues, Thor and Foster rekindle their romantic relationship, and then
Right.
Foster reveals her illness, right? So they're flying back from the God City in their crazy little theme park ride that they turned into a dimension hopping device. So I guess they went straight from there to the Shadow Realm. That was, dude, the teleportation and like Bifrost components with the axe were really, really bad.
So remind me, he can use Mjolnir to teleport between dimensions, right?
Maybe, but he
But
uses the axe, is what he uses.
it's just like it's so unclear.
Yeah, wasn't
Because
it in the other
I
movies
thought
he
it was,
needed Heimdall?
yeah, he like Heimdall was the controller of the Bifrost, but now he can Heimdall's dead and he can, and Asgard's destroyed and he can just fucking transport, I guess.
Yeah.
Very unclear. Another unclear thing.
This is where we get to just the one of the other dumbest shit. So they go to the Shadow Realm where it doesn't seem very smart to go where this guy's going to have an advantage. And they point that out, I think, in the movie. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
wouldn't he be stronger here? But it doesn't really matter. And Natalie Portman walks into like a tent. That for some reason he's in a tent on like the moon. That's what the Shadow Realm looks like. And there's a cave drawing of Thor's axe with like a perfect graph that shows exactly how they're going to use the axe to get to eternity. So eternity is Gore's main goal, where if he can go to eternity with Thor's axe, he can wish all the gods dead. And this is also kind of annoying because I feel like part of the fun of this character, Gore, from what I can tell, is because he's so vengeful and angry. He likes butchering and killing gods with his necro sword. So you take a lot of the fun out of it when he's like, I'm just going to skip to this final step where I go to eternity and just wish them all dead and then I'm done. But, that's just bad writing. I'd rather watch a movie where this guy's just like an unstoppable force murdering hundreds of gods across the runtime and each one's like cooler and cooler than like, all right, he's done murdering gods because he can just skip every step and go straight to wishing them all dead.
It's so true, dude. I mean, he seems so badass to start, and then when he wants to skip, it's ridiculous. And we've never seen or heard of Eternity before either.
Yeah.
Like, ideally,
and Thor knows about it, right?
Yeah. Did he know about it during like Avengers? Did he know about it during then?
I can only assume so. He knew about it when Zeus started talking about it in the Omnipotent City. So wouldn't the ability to go somewhere with a device you already have in the axe and make one wish be really, really useful for, I don't know, Thanos when he's going after all the Infinity Stones, or the Avengers when they're trying to bring everybody back?
They introduced a lot of shit that we've never heard of before that drastically affects like how I view the entire universe, like Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe you can provide what you think on this, but it's stuff like that that makes me wonder if any of the writers or directors from these movies have like seen all the other movies in the MCU. Like it doesn't feel like it, honestly. I know that there
Um,
have been directors who said like, "Oh, I saw one or two of them," but they don't watch all of them.
it's just like adding these super overpowered things at this stage of the game is a little ridiculous. I wish they would
Mhm.
stop doing it. But dude, the Shadow Realm was creepy. The like the black and how it was all black and white, and I kind of liked that. But again, it's super tonal change from the bright and golden god scene. I felt like I was watching a different movie.
Yeah. So, what did your notes say about that?
I kind of stopped after the tutu thing, to be honest with you, because I thought it was getting to like the climax and I wanted to pay attention. But
I did like that this movie felt shorter than the other one. So, I mean, at this point, they lose the fight, right? What's her name? Valkyrie is dying, and Foster. Well, no. So Foster's like, we got to go back because Valkyrie's hurt, but it's kind of weird because this mission seems so important, like saving these kids, that like if you have a chance to beat Gore and get the kids back, you should probably take that chance and not worry about one of your soldiers who's, just trying to save the kids, right?
it's
So that
exactly right.
that was weird. And then that's when they come back to Earth. That's when we find out that, or when Jane Foster tells Thor that she's dying of cancer, and for whatever reason, Mjolnir is sapping her strength, which is another weird plot hole that a lot of people have pointed out.
Can I
Carolyn
ask
was
you?
against it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say she takes the power of Mjolnir and she's healthy, right? And then when she goes back to her human form, she's dying.
Well, they
Why?
actually they say in the movie that each time she uses the hammer, it's sapping her strength and not actually protecting her.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. I thought she could just change into Thor and be fine. And I was like, then just stay Thor. Like, what's the big deal?
No, they make a point that if she uses the hammer one more time, it'll kill her.
Yeah.
But that's dumb because didn't Chris Hemsworth tell the hammer to protect her and not kill her?
It's true, dude. Oh my God. Should have added that to the notes. But yeah, and
Yeah.
then so she's in the hospital and he's like, stay here. I gotta go deal with some bad guys, and then she's
Yeah,
like,
why
I
don't you
wanna
tell
go.
us why don't you tell us what happens at our climax, Chris? We're in the third act now. Just tell us how this goes.
She's in the hospital bed. She's like, I want to go. He's like, you can't go because you're dying. And she's like, okay, I'll stay. But she doesn't stay. She ends up coming at the last second and saving him. And then, dude, that last scene, I thought, okay, so basically she comes to save him. They get to eternity, right? And Thor and Christian Bale are fighting, which is a pretty sweet fight. And then it looks like Thor's going to die. Jane shows up, saves him.
Mm-hmm.
But Gore ends up killing her, or no, I don't know, she returns to her human form. I can't remember. But at one
Yeah.
point she's dying in Thor's arms, and Gore is at the eternity thing about to make a wish. And I was like, is he gonna wish for her to survive in lieu of getting his daughter back? And he did not do that.
Yeah,
But
no, he wishes for his daughter back because he sees that Thor chooses to spend his last few minutes loving Foster, even though in Thor's mind, Thor is about to die because Gore is about to wish all of the gods to die. So that moment of beauty is where Thor requests that, or where Gore decides to wish um, for his daughter back, and then Thor decides he's going to take care of the daughter now that both Gore and Jane Foster are dead.
no, so dude, you know what happened is Gore kills Thor's girlfriend, then wishes for his daughter back, and then proceeds to ask Thor to raise his daughter after killing Thor's girlfriend. I was like, no, like say no. But Thor, of course, is like, yes, I will.
Yeah. And
A
wait,
little ridiculous.
I don't know if they explain this. Maybe it's because of the Necro Sword, because it does get destroyed. But why does Gore die? Does making a wish in eternity kill you?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Maybe the power of the sword wore off.
I
That would be a good
guess.
question. Yeah, I don't know.
It says in the Wikipedia, as Gore dies from the curse, he requests Thor to take care of Love, being his daughter. That's weird. You know what I just realized? We're at the end of the movie, and yeah, that's basically it. We haven't talked at all really about Korg, Taika Waititi's
You're right.
character, who's a just joke vending machine, just popping them out all the time. And a lot of times he's just repeating what somebody else said, and it's not funny. What'd you think of Korg?
Dude, I'm a Korg fan. I like him, but I kind of feel like if he didn't have the New Zealand accent, like he wouldn't be funny, you know? Sometimes I feel like I'm just laughing at his accent and not actually his jokes. But I thought he was good, and I was actually genuinely sad when he at one point he gets blown up, and you think
Oh,
he's
you mean
dead.
when the animators were tired of animating a whole body, so they figured let's just make him just a
It's so
face.
true. They just carry his face around.
Dude, I want to point out this. I have not seen it brought up anywhere else, but there is a major incontinuity or continuity error or retcon, I should say. Do you remember when in Thor Ragnarok, when Korg is introduced, he says he ended up on the prison gladiator wars because he tried to start a revolution but didn't put out enough pamphlets? Do you
Oh
remember that?
yeah. Uh-huh.
And he says nobody showed up to revolution except my mom and her boyfriend, who I hate.
Yeah.
And then in this movie, he claims he had two dads. Which is it? Which is it,
Oh my
Korg? It's
God.
bullshit. Taika Waititi decided to pull a J.K. Rowling and retroactively make one of his characters gay when he didn't think of it from the beginning. And
You're
I know that's
right.
not a character we ever meet, but he said he had a mom in Thor Ragnarok, so where the hell is she? True.
Dude, I can't believe that Korg thing. You shattered my world. It's
Yeah,
nuts.
I mean,
So how does the movie ends with Thor raising? It cuts to Thor. He's raising Gore's daughter,
mhm.
and they like run out and are fighting somebody, and her eyes glow purple. Did you see that?
Yeah. What the hell was
Where
that?
does her power come from? What are her powers? Does she have like the power of the necromancer? Does she have like what's the fucking deal? Is she worthy?
I don't know, man. Does she hold the hammer? I feel like she does.
She has some sort of weapon. I'm not sure if it's the
No,
hammer. I
I
can't
don't think she has
remember.
the hammer because I definitely remember because the hammer has a tutu and like markers all over it now. So I remember Thor holding it at the very end.
And like there was never any conversation about her having powers ever, right? She was just
Yeah,
a normal daughter of Thor, and then he wishes her back, and she's just like fucking OP, just like badass.
yeah, man. This movie wasn't very good. I don't really have much. I mean, so yeah, we got through the end. What are your
Yeah,
overall thoughts? I mean, like we both kind of said it was tried really hard to be funny. What do you think?
I was after thinking it over, for a few days after the movie, I give it like a 67%. It was definitely entertaining. There's no dispute there. Like I enjoyed watching it. The plot was stupid. A lot of the jokes were stupid. Plot holes galore, as we pointed out, and not enough screen time for the badass villain.
Mhm.
And to like in conclusion, where the fuck are we going, Haas? What is the plan here? Where are these
Yeah,
movies
man.
going?
Uh, that is a great question. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I kind of was feeling the MCU was losing its way up until Infinity War. That kind of pulled me back in. I had felt like a lot of the movies had started to get pretty bad. And then between Infinity War and Endgame, we had Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I maintain is the worst Marvel movie. Is so bad. And we had Captain
What?
Marvel. Dude, I don't. Well, if you want, we'll do a podcast on that. But
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp is complete garbage. Um, but I think the sad part is these movies have to get planned out years in advance before direction can really be sorted out or committed to, or actors contracts can be negotiated. And as a result, you get a lot of movies that can't really commit to any particular direction for the franchise as a whole because you know things weren't really that set up ahead of Infinity War. A lot of the movie is them getting together in their respective groups and figuring out what the immediate threat is, right?
They
Um,
did what they did do though was set up a big bad guy that
a
would show up
little,
at the end of it. Yeah, well, he was at the end
yeah.
of every movie after Avengers
Well, I
mostly.
read that there was no real plan when Avengers came out. Joss Whedon filmed the Thanos scene without any permission up top in the Avengers. Just kind of decided that that's something he'd like to tease. They didn't really have a plan to bring him in the long term. And then everyone thought he was going to be the villain in the second Avengers, but they weren't ready for that. And maybe at that point had decided that they were going to build a different kind of direction. I know they still hadn't decided on the Infinity Saga at that point, but that's why he kind of comes in the I guess they had decided a little bit on the Infinity Saga, but I don't think they had really mapped it out yet. That's why you have that weird scene at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron where Thanos says, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
Yeah,
But it wasn't like Ultron was like his minion. So what the hell is he talking about?
fine, I'll do it myself in 15 years.
Yeah,
Dude, but
exactly.
all I'm saying is there's no, and since Phase 4 has started and all these Disney Plus shows, there's no connection in the post-credit scene. Like no one from another. Am I wrong about this? Although I guess at the end of Shang-Chi, you see Hulk and Captain Marvel. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I think if that's what you're living for, they're in like a de-escalation phase for sure. I mean, it used to be if or the reason Ragnarok was such a massive deal, or Spider-Man Homecoming, or even the weird Falcon cameo in Ant-Man was in the individual movies, we almost never had crossovers. But then after Civil War, now we expect it, right? Like if you go see a
yeah,
Marvel movie, you expect at least one other MCU character to pop in at some point. That's the thing we love and like freak out about. But now the MCU is kind of like they don't have that trick in their book, and so they pulled out this new trick, which was the multiverse. And yeah, we got Spider-Man No Way Home, which I thought was fucking amazing. I loved seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. But then they just like burnt that same magic in Multiverse of Madness with nothing in mind, right? When they threw Krasinski and Patrick Stewart in, and that's it. Now that's kind of one of the reasons I'm not really interested in watching the shows. I'll still go see the movies because they're less of a time commitment, but I know that they're not gonna put anything really cool or interesting in like that. You know, they just don't, right? They're kind
yeah,
of too afraid to commit to in any one direction, and there isn't really a big plan. It seems like moving forward, and that's why we're not going to get like some crazy scene in one of these movies where the character we didn't know about, or I don't think Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is going to pop up in Secret Invasion or anything. So, it's just kind of something you have to accept. I think.
you're
They want
right.
you to go back to just accepting these movies as one-offs, and the problem is they're getting really bad.
I know, dude. And although you're right, maybe I expect too much, but I just want to say that you got Loki introduces Kang. You know, you haven't seen Hawkeye. I'm going to spoil it for you. It introduces
Go ahead.
Kingpin. It introduces Kingpin. Then you got, end of Doctor Strange. Charlize Theron pops up. You know, and then like end of this movie, which we didn't talk about. Roy Kent from Ted Lasso is Hercules.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, that's
so.
right.
Oh, and I didn't even mention Falcon Winter Soldier, the show. Julia Louis Dreyfus shows up and is basically starting the bad Avengers. I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah,
heard
she
about
was
that.
at the end of Black Widow too, right?
Yeah, so she's recruiting all the bad guys, making a team. I haven't heard about them in forever, but
So yeah,
I'm
you
just
just
gonna
named
stop expecting it.
you just named like 10 things they tease, but who knows what they're going to deliver on, right? Like
I
they still
know.
haven't delivered on the Scorpion in Spider-Man, and that was teased 5 years ago.
It's true. I just would like some direction. I'm all about continuity. We talked about that when we did the Spider-Man episode, but you're right, man. The movies are getting worse. It's worrying me, you know?
Yeah, I think we just, if anything, what it is it's kind of a testament to how amazing the MCU is because they pulled off things that we should never expect, like crazy crossovers across 20 movies, and now we want more, and we want it to all be awesome and amazing, and we want to see a movie with like 50 actors in it that are all at the top of their game playing characters we all know and love. And that's probably not going to happen because, you know, these actors don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, it's so nuts. I was doing a lot of homework recently just on the beginnings of the MCU and how one of the big reasons everything got off the ground was Robert Downey Jr. was so clued in. He actually was the one out there recruiting all the actors to be in the different movies, right? Like he pushed Chris Evans to take the Captain America role. He pushed the different directors to work on Avengers. He basically would like personally call everyone and try to help convince them and get them all on board. And you know, he filmed what I don't know, was he in like 7 or 8 movies total if you
Yeah.
count all his scenes and cameos and like the Incredible Hulk and stuff? I mean, he did a ton of work to make this all happen.
Dude, you're right. And despite this movie sucking, I'm still gonna go see a movie every time it comes out. I'm a slave, you know.
Um, I mean, I skipped Eternals and Shang-Chi in theaters, and part of that was COVID. Um, and part of that was like I felt like I could wait because I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't really expect anything I like need. Like I don't worry about spoilers for an MCU movie because I feel like I know what's gonna happen based on the trailers every
Yeah.
time. So I don't need to go see them opening night, you know.
So what's next? You know what's next is Black Panther.
Oh, really?
Uh,
That comes out this year?
Dude, it comes out in November, and they haven't released a trailer yet,
And
or
it's
any like first looks or anything.
and it's not. I mean, they're not recasting Chadwick, right?
No,
But
or
we
no,
don't.
they are, but I think it's going to be his little sister. Is
Well,
my
so
theory.
so it's like
I think they're
there's
going to be
not
like,
going to
oh,
be a
he
King
passed away.
T'Challa. Yeah, they're gonna.
No, no, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, man, I'll probably see that one. I liked the first Black Panther. It's gonna be, and honestly, I'm just so interested in what the hell they're gonna do to like justify the movie when the lead character's dead, which is a huge tragedy. R.I.P. Chadwick. So I'll probably check that one out. Last thing I want to talk to, I know we're getting close to about an hour here, but dude, what is your opinion on the kind of CGI-ness of the MCU these days, especially this movie specifically? Like one of the main complaints I hear is that we're just watching like a CGI fest and there's just so much, you know, computer generated effects and visual effects being thrown in. It's kind of hard to see. And I don't know if you saw the new Top Gun movie, but that movie was really cool because it didn't feel like there was a lot of CGI. I mean, I'm sure there was some, but I know they were using real, fighter planes and filming things more or less in reality. And you could definitely feel it. That movie looked incredible. So it's kind of
Right.
tough to switch gears and go see Thor: Love and Thunder with all the CGI going around, all the green screens.
Dude, it's pretty bad. You know, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness was really bad. I mean, that entire movie was filmed in front of a green screen. It's like, where's the real world anymore? I think it's because a lot of it's like off world or in a different universe, you know. But you're right. Top Gun was awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe we just need like, hopefully Black Panther will be a little better, you know, because it's on Earth. And maybe, yeah,
I've
we'll
got bad
see.
news for you.
It actually takes place at
No,
in the shadow realm.
some people may say that the reason it happens is not based in any writing, but it's because in Hollywood, in movie making in general, costumes, set, sound, design artists, all those people are unionized. So they're a lot more expensive to use if you want to build practical effects for making a movie, but VFX artists are not unionized. So it's way cheaper to digitally insert things and just film your movie up front around a green screen and then tell animators to fix it later in post than it would be to make a big plan, finalize your script, know what stunts you're going to do, kind of going into it. That's why, like, do you remember in Spider-Man Far From Home? I don't know if you saw this, but do you remember how Samuel L. Jackson shoots Ned Leeds with a tranquilizer dart when he gets in the hotel room?
Oh yeah.
That gun was CGI. He was not holding
What?
anything. Yeah, and like Thor's hammer is always CGI. He's not holding anything when they're filming. I don't know if you
Pretty
ever
sure
watch.
his whole outfit with the helmet was CGI too. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
if you ever watch the like filming and behind the scenes of a Marvel movie, it's really depressing, man. Like there's very few things that are real, and it sucks because you kind of see it when you're watching these things.
I remember seeing the set pictures from Endgame, and they're just literally in a giant gray room with like nothing. And I was like, oh shit, like that's where they are?
Yeah, it's such a bummer, right? Because then you go see a movie like Top Gun, and you're like, wow, this looks incredible. I love this. I want to look at
Yes.
more of this.
So you think it's just going to get worse because they don't want to shell out the money for like non CGI shit?
I don't know, man. The one thing I will give Marvel credit for is they do seem to be pretty responsive to what people say and like what fans kind of want and say. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't easy to get Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire to make a Spider-Man movie again. And they did it, you know? I mean, it was
Yeah.
obvious for years that that's what we wanted, and they gave it to us, and it was fucking awesome. And we rewarded them with billions of dollars. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think it'll take a while because I think these movies are planned out years in advance, and they're in this weird situation now where they're trying to get out like 4 movies and 5 shows in a year, which is insane. Do you remember back when there was 1 or maybe 2 Marvel movies an entire year?
Yeah.
Those
Now they're
were,
doing like 3 or 4, right?
yeah,
It's
dude.
nuts.
Like in 2017, oh, I might be wrong about this, but I think 2017 we got Black Panther, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Thor Ragnarok. And that was the first year with 3 Marvel movies, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And now there's just a new Marvel thing every week. And that's why I can't watch the shows. I don't
I was
have
going
the
to ask you
time.
if you're going to watch this She-Hulk show. It's coming out soon.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She-Hulk Attorney at Law. That's what it's called, Haas. It sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. It sounds dog shit. But they
sucks.
got Mark Ruffalo in it, so yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Dude, I think Daredevil, I know it's not MCU, but the Netflix Daredevil show is one of the greatest television shows I've ever watched, honestly.
I love that too. It was incredible. Yeah. But that's too dark for the MCU, man.
Dude, so what else? Any more thoughts on Thor Love and Thunder to kind of bring it back to that? I want you to just give me your honest take. Where would you like to see things go next? And do you think Hemsworth is done?
No, I don't think, although I read an article that said, you know how at the end of the movie it says Thor will return? And then I read that like Chris Hemsworth and Taika were like, what? Like, really? They didn't even know he's coming back. But Hemsworth says he wants to keep playing the character, and I kind of love him for it because I don't know how anyone else would play Thor. Them introducing his daughter leads me to believe that she's probably going to take the mantle at some point when she's like a teenager. But all I want to see, Haas, is a big bad guy that we can, get hyped up about everyone coming together to fight, because that's the formula that worked for the past 15 years. Just do that,
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to see.
All right. And if you had to fix this movie, what would you do?
I would give Christian Bale like 30 more minutes of screen time. I would cut out the Korg, keep the Korg to a minimum. I would cut out the stupid talking to the weapons thing. And I don't know. I want to say cut out the God scene, but some of it was okay.
a lot of subtraction, not a lot of addition.
Yeah, just cut it out. Just cut the whole thing.
Yeah, I just found myself so confused when I went to see this movie because let's see, Hemsworth has now been in 3 Thor movies before this. He was in 3 Avengers movies and then Endgame. So he's played the character 7 times. This is his 8th time to the role. I think he even has. Does he have a cameo in Doctor Strange? I don't think so. All right, whatever. That's like 8 times Hemsworth has played this character. This is probably his last hurrah, right? I mean, I would just imagine he wants to do other things. What were they thinking? Like, don't you want to give the character like a good send off? Like, what story were you like, all right, we're gonna bring him back for the 8th time? It probably cost them everything. Like, he's probably made more than any other Disney employee this year. Like, this is what you came up with as the story that needed to be told. Like, I just can't help but think of Logan, right? They wanted Hugh Jackman back, again, an actor who's really passionate about the role, an actor that we couldn't imagine anyone else playing this character, right? And so they said, no, we want to do this right by the fans. We want to make a movie that that gives everyone what they want, and we're going to work our asses off on it. And they had a director in James Mangold who did do the last Wolverine movie before it, who, you know, really wanted to tell the specific story. So but this felt like they said, all right, we need to bring out Thor is one of the big three Avengers with Iron Man and Captain America, right? We want to make one more Thor movie, but we wanted to come out within a few years after Endgame so we could get people hyped again. We need a familiar name on the calendar. Let's just make a movie and let's just get the director from last time. And that's just kind of what it felt like. It didn't feel like this was a story they had planned out and really wanted to tell. And that it really shows, especially because, like you mentioned in the beginning, we felt this massive arc for Thor for so many movies, and he left Infinity War as like the most powerful he's ever been. And that isn't really the feeling they led the movie with. Like, certainly in the beginning, they're showing how incredibly powerful it is. He's just like whooping up on armies, and the Guardians of the Galaxy aren't doing anything. But that should have, in my opinion, had more of a play on the story. There wasn't really kind of any acknowledgement that he's at like a, for lack of a better word, god tier level of power, and what kind of struggles and sacrifices that might have to come with that, especially facing someone who thinks gods are evil and only care about themselves and aren't doing anything to help everyone. There's more of an interesting story, I think, there between Gore the God Butcher and the fact that Thor is the most powerful he's ever been, that doesn't really get played on as well. So what do you think of that?
Dude, you're so right. It could have been that would have been such a more badass movie than what we saw. It was just like, all right, Ragnarok was like funny, and there was the funny rock guy. Let's do that same thing, but instead of Jeff Goldblum's character, we'll have Russell Crowe in a tutu, and instead of his evil sister, we'll have Christian Bale and a shit ton of makeup. Yeah, good. Oh, keep it under 2 hours. Keep it under 2 hours. Yeah. You're right, man. It's a shame.
All right. Well, that's about all I had to say about it. Yeah, not a big fan of this movie. I probably will never watch it again. But
I'm going to give it another whirl when it comes out on Disney Plus, but I'm probably going to be very intoxicated when I do.
All right. Yeah, Chris, anything else you want to talk to or add as we winding this down?
No, man. Thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you. I miss you. And let's just hope that, this MCU shit gets a little better here so we don't have to stop watching.
Yeah, man. And if you think one of the shows is worth my time, send me a note. I'll look up the Wikipedia summary and tell you what I watched.
Will do, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining today on Los Angeles. And thank you so much to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Chris, for his take on Thor: Love and Thunder. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.